Alright folks, listen up. Now, I haven't really talked about this yet, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up, especially as now we're into the summer months, and that's the topic of hydration. So of course hydration involves fluid intake, but that's just part of the picture. Now if you get deep in the weeds, we can start talking about electrolytes and things of that nature, but I'm going to keep it simple and short for this discussion. What I want to bring to your attention, folks, is not just the heat illness component of hydration, but I want to talk about some of the other aspects of hydration that aren't often discussed. Thing is, when you're even slightly dehydrated, it has tremendous negative effects to a host of things. First of all, your performance goes down, both physically and mentally. You're less agile, less coordinated, less attentive, produce less force, all these things. Furthermore, you're also significantly more injury prone. All of which are terrible things if you're an athlete or a tradesperson that has to do some laborious activities outside. And that drop in mental acuity can be disastrous if you're working late, long shifts, have long commutes, operating heavy equipment, trying to lift heavy, things of this nature. Another thing that happens when you're dehydrated is it can actually affect your perception of discomfort and your perception of time. What do I mean by this? So you ever work, an 8-hour shift, a 10-hour shift, and before you know it, it's lunchtime. And you're like, what? Feels like I just started. And then next thing you know, your shift's over and it's time to go home. You're like, oh man, today went by really quick. Conversely, you ever work those shifts where you pretty much just started, like you're maybe an hour or two in, and it feels like you've already been there 12, 14 hours, and it just is like pulling teeth to even make it to lunch, much less to the end of the day. That's what dehydration can do to you. It can alter your perception of time. It can exacerbate your sensation of discomfort, whether that's just pain or the general malaise of fatigue or whatever aches and pains and or psychological discomfort that you have. Being dehydrated basically across the board makes you a worse functioning organism. Physically, mentally, emotionally, you're just far less resilient. So what are some other ways we can address this besides the obvious, right? Just drink water, electrolytes, things of that nature. Well, a big chunk of our hydration also comes from what we eat, folks. So one of the things that I like to tell my workers, like today when I was teaching class, is that, regardless of whether you train or not, make better food choices to support your hydration when you know you're going to be working long hours in this heat. And especially if you're training, don't just think about the macros and the calories, think about hydration too. And the micros, but that's a separate discussion. Biology is action over time. So make choices before you work or train or both in this heat that support those activities so you can be at your best. Thanks for supporting the channel, folks. Make sure you stay hydrated in this heat. Consistency is a superpower, and stay in the fight.